We saw Hansen running with the ones yesterday. What stood out about him in the spring that you gave him that opportunity?
Yeah, he's a guy that's consistently improved throughout his time here. So, again, you're going to see a lot of different combinations, especially early on in camp, and just allowing guys to compete, and we'll try to find the best five to go out there and help us win.
How long do you kind of take the personnel groupings that you had in mind coming into camp and give a sample size before you start shaking things up? How large of a sample size do you need to see from these guys?
Well, I think everything's fluid, like I mentioned yesterday. So that's just something that typically I don't like to have a script too far in advance, especially with, you have guys coming off PUP or NFI or coming back from injury, or you have guys that may unfortunately get injured. So all of that's pretty fluid, but we usually script out 3 to 4 days in advance just to keep us in front of everything and make sure our players have the information and whatnot and have a focus. But, throughout the course of camp, it's so fluid.
With a bunch of guys out, is that impacting how you run a practice? Like during the offseason, there was times where you had two groups going at the same time. Is that guys prohibiting that at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt about it. And but I think just looking back to a year ago, typically we call that a two-spot when you got both groups going at the same time. It just allows for a more efficient practice, so you don't have to be out there quite as long, because I know you guys are always out there with a stopwatch, seeing how long we're on the grass. So it just allows us to get our work in a more efficient manner, and making sure that everybody gets enough reps. But right now, yeah, anytime you have one position group that's a little down on numbers, it definitely affects that. But again, last year I don't think we implemented that until about the fourth practice or so.
And then speaking of time on the field, obviously it was limited to 90 minutes yesterday, I think 105 today. Do you shorten periods, or do you just cut out stuff that you would normally do and then you add it when the time limits go up?
Yeah, I would say it's both. Some periods are a little bit shorter, and then we definitely cut out some stuff as well. I think we had 3 team periods yesterday. Today we'll have 4 with everybody, and then we'll end practice a little early, and then just having a developmental period that's a few plays to make sure that those young guys are continuing to develop, because I think that's one of the challenges when you do have those time constraints. And certainly we're aware of that at all times, just the amount of volume you're putting on your players. I think a coach's natural tendency is to want to be out there forever, and really in the grand scheme of or over the course of training camp, it can kind of set you back, because if you lose somebody, then that affects every other day down the road. So we want to be intentional and smart about how we implement all our systems, and allow these guys to kind of acclimate themselves back to training camp.
Yesterday we saw an offensive line, Jake go from right guard to center, and of course last year Lucas Patrick with a lot of play, he's moved on. Do you have some other young candidates that can play that unique position that touches the ball every play?
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of different guys that are going to be in there at center as well, and certainly we know when Elton comes back, he's a guy that can do that. John Runyon will be there. Cole Schneider. We got a lot of guys that can go in and out and play that position.
Your receivers were making plays yesterday. Pretty impressed for the first day, and then speaking of that, just Romeo, his first day, he seemed to showcase what he had already day one. I know it's just day one, now you didn't have.
Yeah, you said it best. It's just day one. So anybody can do something one day. It's how consistently can you do it, and can you make those incremental improvements? And that's what we're really looking for. But I thought all in all, I thought yesterday was a good first day. I definitely think for the young guys, it was an advantage to come back and have a couple very light practices to kind of get their mind around that first install. So it'll be interesting to see how they move forward when the volume starts to accumulate throughout the course of training camp, and just how fast they can play. But I was happy with the performance. I was really happy with our effort across the board. I thought just watching our defense, we're really stressing finishing to the football. Those guys were turning and running as well as I've ever seen them do it. And it's just really about setting standards of how we operate on a daily basis.
With that said, Aaron said that tongue in cheek, it's a defensive team now, but the offense got a day yesterday. Did you agree with that assessment with the offense? And even more, how important is it, even being in shorts, to have that kind of, you talk about standard competition set as a tone early in camp?
Yeah, the old cliche, iron sharpens iron. So you definitely want that. You want to try to create as much competition as possible, because I think that's going to bring out the best in each other. And so, but I don't sit there and say that was an offensive day or that was a defensive day. You're just really looking at the process of all the things that you can control and less about the outcomes, especially early on.
How much meaning was there with Juwan Winfrey going out there first with the ones? Is that something that he's kind of earned this offseason, or is it more happenstance?
Well, I think that, again, I wouldn't look too much into who's playing where right now or who's rolling with the ones. I think that Juwan's done some really great things here in terms of just looking back a year ago at training camp. He had a hot start, and unfortunately he got dinged up and missed some time, and I think that kind of derailed his progression. But he's played some meaningful snaps for us, in last season in particular. So he's a guy that has continued to give great effort on a daily basis, and I think you're seeing him improve, and we're excited about him.
Man, how do you thread the needle of knowing when a young player is comfortable enough with your base schemes and getting their feet wet, and then experimenting with their versatility? I think about a guy like Quay, who could probably give you a lot of different looks on a given down in a given game, but may not be ready for that. How do you work through that process, especially early in camp?
That's a great question. I think that's the answer we're all looking for, and I think it's a lot of feel, and it's our job, I think, as coaches, especially early on, to put these guys in the most uncomfortable situations as possible and see how they react. And that's, they're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. Typically, just like we told our team, I mean, that's how you grow. You're going to learn from your mistakes. And so it's just, it is part of the process. So I can't really give a definitive answer to that, but I think a lot of it is feel and just seeing how guys handle those moments. And we'll get a really good look at it throughout the course of training camp, throughout the 3 preseason games, and we'll see where he's at. And I think just with any young player, you don't quite always know where it's going to go. And it's a lot of feel, and there's going to be a lot of adjustments, not only throughout training camp, but when you get into the season. But certainly he is a talented dude. He loves ball. He's attacked it with the right mindset, and so we're really excited about him.
I asked you yesterday about cross-training Zach Tom and Sean Ryan, and you said we'll see, and then we saw Zach Tom at left tackle. Is that something you're just looking to see what he can give you potentially out there, or is there something about his game that you think that serves that side well?
Well, certainly we're down on tackles right now anyways. I mean, we've got a couple guys out, and that kind of plays an impact as well. And so you look at the guys that could potentially fill in if need be in that role, and certainly he's had that experience. And I do think, like I mentioned yesterday, the more you move younger players, it's hard for them to get their footing at a specific position. But he is a smart guy. Again, he's got a great mindset and great mentality, and it's not going to be perfect. We realize that, but again, that's part of the process.
You talked yesterday just about this rehab process to get back, and admitted there were even some dark days that he had to get through. How have you seen him kind of approach this whole process?
Yeah, Bobby just comes in and he goes right to work, and that's what we're looking for. He's got a great mentality. You see it. He is a team guy. He wants to be around his guys, and that's tough for any player that has to go through such an extensive rehab process. And I think that it teaches you a lot of lessons along the way as well, and just how to handle adversity. And that's part of this game. And the guys that can do it tend to thrive. And I think he's a guy that is thriving in that situation, and I can't wait to get him back out there.
What were your impressions of Royce at tackle? Obviously, a guy that's played a lot of guard for you.
Yeah, you know, again, it's early on. We did have him out there a little bit during OTAs, and he's a guy that's got that flexibility, having played that position before, and you know, we'll see where it goes.
Will the plan again be not to play Aaron Rodgers in any preseason games, or could all the new faces in the receiving corps change that at all, or is it too early to tell?
I think that's up for discussion. So that's not something that he and I have talked about at this point, but yeah, certainly, again, everything's fluid right now.
I want to ask about Zach Tom too. Excuse me, building on Ryan's question. I think it was during the rookie camp, he talked about he wanted to be a 5-position player. Is that a realistic thing? I mean, maybe in the long scheme it is, but like, is it realistic to be a guy who can play everywhere?
I think it's a great challenge, but you know, we've got a little saying: if that's his expectation, his work ethic better exceed his expectations. So a lot of it's gonna be on him to be able to go out there and do it. But he's got the intelligence and the athleticism to do that. You know, the only guy that I've been around up to this point that's proven it is a guy like Elton. I mean, he's done it all. So, but you know, certainly we're not going to limit Zach to just any one spot.
Matt, in the past you've spoken about your staff and the division of labor when it comes down to like red zone, third down calls and things like that. Has that been I don't even know if you made the transition yet, but has transitioning to new guys on the staff, has that happened already? Like, do guys know what they're in charge of, or is that part of this process?
Yeah, no, all these guys have clearly defined roles, and you know, there is a learning curve there, just like there is with anything. And you know, throughout the course of the off season and then into training camp and into the preseason games, that'll give us a good look at what it's going to look like, how they present to the guys. And you know, I'm excited to hear some new voices. And it's definitely, it always, when you get new faces in the building, whether it's players, coaches, whoever, it does stimulate some new ideas, some new thought.
Now, can you speak to Aaron's impact? You've seen it now for a few years, especially in an initial practice, of how he impacts the new players that he's working with, just in a short 90-minute window yesterday?
Yeah, well, I think there's a standard which he, number one, holds himself to, and then I think all the guys kind of see that, and they just stand up a little bit straighter in that huddle, so to speak. So, you know, he demands it of himself first and foremost. So I think that, you know, he exemplifies what it looks like to be a pro, and, you know, he's been doing it at a really high level for a really long time.
Time for two more.
Hey, Matt, I talked to Adrian Amos yesterday, and he said that while the defense, as everyone has said, looks great on paper for them, they feel like they still have a lot to prove. How have you seen the leadership of those guys who came back, Adrian, Dre, Rasul, kind of help focus everyone into what they feel like they could be this season?
Yeah, I think it's part of our growth process from now until the end of camp. So by far, we're far from an unfinished product, but certainly we're excited about the possibilities. We're excited about the people, not only the player, but the people. And I think we've got a lot of great guys that are really intelligent, that work their ass off on a daily basis, and you know, that gets you excited as a coach.
I know you don't put any focus into injury timelines anymore, but when you're putting in your installs for offense with so many key guys out, do you just kind of look at what you have on the field there when you're crafting and building your offense, or do you keep in mind that those pieces you expect to come back at some point, and kind of building with that in mind as well?
Well, I think you start out with a general philosophy, and then you put it all on paper and how everything fits, and then you make adjustments along the way based on who you have available to you. But I would say, you know, you take as much as possible. The personnel piece always kind of sticks in your mind, but you try to lay it out how you envision it, not necessarily for right now, but maybe for, you know, week 17.